Okay, let's try and unpack this. Imagine, right, feeling safer, trekking across just punishing landscapes, dodging landmines, even being preyed upon by animals and killers. Safer doing that than sitting in your own living room in America.
Yeah.
That's the reality, the jarring reality our narrator, Valentine Achak Deng, a lost boy from Sudan, confronts. His Atlanta home is invaded, and it forces him to relive just the most horrific moments of his past.
It's such a powerful opening, isn't it? The narrative immediately sets up this profound comparison. It's not just, Sudan versus America, but these vastly different realities of violence, of betrayal even. And the core insight, I think, is that safety isn't just a place on a map. It's deeply personal, psychological. It's something that's constantly being reshaped maybe by past journey.
Just seeing the past just erupting into the present.
Exactly. It really challenges our assumptions about what security actually means.
Absolutely. So today, we're diving deep into this extraordinary life, using excerpts from Valentine Achak Deng's autobiography. We're going to trace his path, from war-torn Sudan through the really harsh realities of refugee camps, Ethiopia, Kenya, all the way to the complex and often really unexpected challenges of resettlement in America.
Yeah.
Our mission, really, is to highlight his resilience, his struggles, and his profound reflections on things like identity, faith, belonging.
It's an incredible journey.
So before everything just turned upside down, Valentine's early life in Memoir. It sounds almost idyllic, doesn't it?
It really does. He paints this truly vibrant picture.
Tell us about his home life, the Dinka culture that shaped him.
Yeah, well, he remembers his mother, describes her as taller than most women, and dressing bravely, he says, always in these glorious yellows and reds and greens. He mentions one dress specifically, the pregnant yellow of a setting sun, that made her this swishing column of yellow you could see from far away.
Wow, what an image.
And his father, he was a prosperous businessman, had a shop. Young Valentine would play on the dirt floor, using hammers, believe it or not, as the head and neck of a giraffe.
Hammers as giraffes. That's such a vivid, playful detail from a childhood, isn't it?
It speaks volumes about that innocence, yeah.
How did the traditional Dinka beliefs and the community dynamics kind of factor into this early life?
Well, the Dinka had this deep sense of pride. They called themselves Maninjang, which means men among men.
Right.
They believed they were the chosen people of God. Valentine even recounts his father explaining the what? This Dinka story about God giving cattle to the Arabs, which sort of implicitly positioned the Arabs as, well, inferior.
Interesting.
And his father had 6 wives, which was common practice. The community, initially at least, was pretty skeptical about Christianity and written language, even though Valentine himself was baptized by a Father Matong, who actually gave him his Christian name, Valentine.
So a mix of tradition and some outside influence even then.
Definitely. And it was multi-ethnic, too. You had Dinka Christians, Muslims from Darfur, Arab Muslims, all coexisting in Memoir, living lives of relative ease, he says, protecting the market together before everything changed.
And then everything did change.
Yeah.
The war didn't arrive like some distant rumor, did it? It was immediate, terrifying.
Brutal and sudden. He vividly recalls seeing these great black crickets, helicopters flying overhead.
Perfect.
Yeah, their sound was rich and black, louder than anything I had ever known. The village was systematically burned, just house by house, with torches. 30 people were killed, just like that. Some were even playing soccer when it happened. His own father was publicly beaten, arrested.
And his mother.
In just a desperate, heart-wrenching moment, she told him to run alone. She explained that her height, she was tall, would make them both easy targets for the mounted Arab militia, the Murahalin.
That's an unimaginable moment for a child, to be told that by your own mother.
How does a young mind even begin to process that scale of violence, that betrayal? It forces this radical rewiring of innocence. Valentine talks about seeing the complete breakdown of everything familiar. Suddenly, it's all life or death decisions, instant ones.
He saw horrific things, didn't he?
Unbelievable things. Witnessing boys being taken by lions, first Ariath, then Angelo, then his friend Deng. He remembers the visceral memory of dead bodies on a truck, encountering a faceless man whose skin had, quote, melted.
Oh, my.
These experiences, they forced this unimaginable maturity. It led him eventually to this desperate act of just cursing everything, the government, the land, even the Dinka themselves. It was like a primal scream, maybe a form of agency against just overwhelming powerlessness.
So after that initial chaos, he joins this group of boys led by Dutmajok. They became part of what was known as the Red Army.
Right.
What was life like on that epic, brutal journey across Sudan and into Ethiopia? What moments of sort of collective survival stood out?
It was just this unimaginable odyssey, constant walking, profound starvation. I mean, they ate things that defied Dinka tradition, like eggs, baby birds, even elephant meat.
Just to survive.
Exactly. Widespread illness, beatings, the constant threat of Antonov bombings from those same great black crickets. Yeah. It was relentless.
And the River Gilo crossing? That sounds particularly harrowing.
Oh, it was. Fraught with crocodiles, gunfire from both Ethiopian soldiers, and incredibly, even a Dinka man shooting at them. The emotional toll. It was immense. So many boys died, and he says there was simply no time to mourn.
No time to mourn.
But, amidst all that horror, you do see these moments of shared experience, like the pride they took in a rebel fighter, Mowane's gun, or the collective hope they pinned on Ethiopia, even if it wasn't quite the land of buildings and bowls of oranges they dreamed of.
And that name, Red Army.
Yeah, it carries these complex implications, doesn't it, of both victimhood but also this kind of nascent militarization. Ethiopia did offer, as he puts it, a measure of safety and some rest, but yeah, it was far from the utopia they imagined.
So after the sheer terror of that initial journey, these lost boys, they tried to rebuild some kind of normal life in the refugee camps, like Pinyudo and later Kakuma. What did things like education, social life look like in those really extraordinary circumstances?
Well, in a world turned upside down, education became this critical anchor, right?
Yeah.
They had teachers like Mr. Condit, who famously told them, "Education is your mother." It instilled this deep respect for learning.
That's powerful.
And there was Miss Gladys, this captivating history teacher who apparently made the Dominics, the boys in the drama group, famous, talking about figures like Genghis Khan.
Drama groups, even there.
Yeah, and quite sophisticated ones, actually, performing plays about really relevant social issues in the camps. AIDS prevention, anger management, conflict resolution, gender equality. And he notes, to their continual amazement, the community genuinely appreciated these efforts.
So there's this vibrant intellectual, artistic life happening amidst all the harshness. But what about the social dynamics, the intense pressures, the hierarchies within the camps?
Oh, the social world was incredibly complex, especially for young men coming of age. There was the whole thing about pursuing the royal girls of Pinyudo, he names them, Igar, Akon, Agum, Yar-Akik.
Huh. Teenage life finds a way.
It does. There were even searchings in the bedroom, whatever that entailed. Valentine himself recounts this Dinka Malul deception where he played the victim, and then a river incident that led to him being socially isolated for a while.
So clear hierarchies existed.
Absolutely. With the unaccompanied minors, like Valentine, often on the lowest rung. But amidst all this, sports, especially basketball, became this hugely important outlet.
Really?
Yeah, the Sudanese boys apparently dominated the courts. It gave them, he says, great pride to think of ourselves as we once had, as the kings of Africa, the money jang.
That money jang again, reclaiming some pride.
Exactly. It really highlights this crucial aspect of refugee life, the attempt to normalize the abnormal, right? Kids trying to learn, socialize, even find romance, all against this backdrop of deprivation and the ever-present threat of conflict, or even recruitment into groups like the SPLA.
The Sudan People's Liberation Army.
Right, where some boys, like Moses, endured severe beatings, and another, Daniel, was fatally kicked. It was a constant danger.
So after a decade in Kakuma, the prospect of resettlement in America, that must have felt like a lifeline, a huge beacon of hope.
Monumental, yeah.
Can you walk us through that transition from the UN census to actually leaving?
It was a huge process. The UN census itself involved building these 6-foot-tall fences.
Fences? Why?
Well, it caused a lot of paranoia. Valentine mentions Holocaust comparisons among some Dinka who feared it was some kind of plan to eliminate them, shows the level of trauma and mistrust.
Understandable, given their history.
Absolutely. And a critical part was writing these autobiographies in English for the UNHCR and the U.S. government. This encouraged what Valentine calls strategic storytelling, emphasizing persecution or desertion from the SPLA, depending on what criteria they thought they needed to meet.
Wow, so even telling your own story became strategic.
Right. The excitement around departures was huge, but also filled with mixed emotions, naturally. Valentine fondly remembers Noriaki, a Japanese aid worker who taught computer skills. They affectionately called him First Car.
Anarchist.
Yeah. And he describes his own departure from Kakuma as deeply emotional, knowing he was leaving behind such a profound, formative chapter of his life.
So imagine arriving in America, the place you've only dreamed of, expecting quiet, peace, safety, after years and years of war and camps. What was his arrival in Atlanta actually like? What were those unexpected realities, the culture shocks?
Well, he was flown to Atlanta, got initial support from the International Rescue Committee, Peachtree United Methodist Church.
Okay, so there was support.
Yes, definitely. A temporary green card, Medicaid, household gifts, a TV, VCR, microwave, that gift pouch we mentioned at the start. But the reality on the ground, it was a stark contrast to any expectation he might have had.
How so?
Well, he describes this profound naivete about American laws, American customs, like being told to go back to Africa on a public bus and not knowing how to react, or just grappling with the concept of monogamy, so different from his father having 6 wives.
Little things, big thing.
Everything.
Yeah.
And a new perception of crime. He talks about assaults by young African-American men, which left him and other lost boys feeling watched, pursued. Finding meaningful work was a real struggle, often ending up in menial jobs at places like Best Buy or a holiday store for really low wages.
And even physical changes.
Yeah, he even developed lactose intolerance, which, apart from being inconvenient, led to humorous misunderstandings, like putting milk in the freezer because he didn't understand refrigeration properly at first.
That's such a striking detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something as simple as where you put the milk becomes this complex cultural puzzle.
It really highlights the sheer breadth of what resettlement actually involves.
Yeah.
This period just reveals the profound challenge of cultural translation. You've got someone with this incredible, harrowing life history,
Right.
but almost zero context for everyday American life. It leads to funny moments, sure, like the milk, but also deeply frustrating misunderstandings. That contrast between the peace he expected and the reality of new kinds of vulnerability.
Yeah, he mentioned something called the refugee way.
Right, like not quite understanding the limits of their host's generosity. He gives this example of almost knocking on the Newtons' door at like 4:48 in the morning because he didn't grasp the social boundaries around time.
Okay, so despite having really generous sponsors like Anne and Gerald Newton and Phil May's people who taught him driving, banking, even how a thermostat works,
Incredible support, yeah.
he still faced this harrowing ordeal.
Yeah.
Tell us about the home invasion, the one that forced him to relive those past traumas.
Yeah, the robbery by these 2 people, Powder and Tanya, it was devastating. Valentine was forced to open his door, then physically assaulted, struck with a gun barrel to the face, punched in the stomach, tied up with a phone cord, and maybe most chillingly, guarded by a TV boy, maybe 10 years old, just sitting there watching him.
The child guard.
And internally, Valentine compares this betrayal, this violation, to the evil so careless he'd seen in the war. In that moment of pain and fear, he says he found himself missing all of Africa.
Missing Africa while being attacked in America. That's heartbreaking. It really shows how that seemingly simple robbery just ripped open those old wounds.
Exactly. It makes you really question the nature of safety, doesn't it?
Yeah. Is true safety ever really possible when the past is that present?
And it links that casual, almost random violence of the American street directly to the systematic horrors of the war he survived. The cultural contrast and how crime is handled was stark, too. He talks about the delayed police response, being handed a dismissive complaint card. Very different from the immediate, often brutal consequences he was used to.
The Lost Boys community itself, even in America, faced its own internal challenges, right? It wasn't all unity and shared experience.
No, far from it. Even with efforts to organize, there were conferences in Kansas and Phoenix to try and form a national network. Organized by Bobby Newmeyer, involving big names like Ted Turner, even NBA legend Manute Bol.
Wow.
But deep internal conflicts were brewing. Valentine writes about intense jealousy and suspicion within the Sudanese community. There was this Hawaii 5-0 incident where some Lost Boys felt others were unfairly favored. Accusations against aid workers like Mary Williams for playing favorites.
So internal politics and jealousies.
And also the constant immense financial pressure from family and acquaintances back home, always needing money. He gives the example of Daniel's gambling problem, losing over $11,000 sent for other purposes. These internal struggles, after everything they'd endured externally, just created another layer of profound disappointment, fragmentation.
So beyond the physical struggles, the resettlement issues, the communal tensions, Valentine also grappled with immense personal loss. Most poignantly, the murder of Tabitha.
Yes.
What happened to her? How did that tragedy hit him?
Tabitha. He describes her as an astonishing Sudanese woman. She had Americanized quite quickly in Seattle. She reunited with Valentine, but her relationship with another man, Deluma, turned abusive. Threats. violence,
Oh, no.
and ultimately she was brutally murdered, stabbed 22 times. Deluma then attempted suicide.
Unbearable.
For Valentine, this just plunged him into profound despair. He questions God, feels like there's a curse or some collective calamity following him, that he just can't escape loss.
That's such an unbearable weight, especially after surviving so much already. What does Tabitha's story, her choices, her death, what does that reveal about that clash of cultures, the burden of the past?
Her story is such a poignant example of that clash, isn't it? Tabitha's choices, things like considering an abortion, leaving Deluma, these would have been almost unthinkable, certainly unprecedented in traditional Sudanese society.
Yeah.
Her death forced Valentine to confront his faith, his identity, the very meaning of his survival. It made him realize very painfully that no love fostered in Kakuma could compete with the prospect of leaving. Her death became this profound catalyst for deep reflection on his whole life's course, really highlighting the immense personal cost of trying to navigate two such vastly different worlds.
So where does this leave Valentine Achak Deng, this man who's lived so many lives already? How does he reconcile this past with his present? What does he aspire to be, despite all the pain, the disappointment?
He really grapples with a profound identity crisis. He feels, quote, not an American, and it seems difficult now to call myself Sudanese.
Caught between worlds.
Completely. And there's immense pressure, both internal and external, to return, to rebuild Sudan. People asking, who will rebuild this country if not you?
That's a heavy burden.
Huge. He's determined to get a legitimate college education, despite setbacks like his mentor Bobby Newmeyer's death and his own self-described mediocre grades. He emphasizes this desire to be more than just hanging in there. He doesn't want to look in the mirror and see the insect that I was during the worst times.
That's powerful imagery.
His struggle is ongoing. It's marked by persistent physical pain, like his headaches.
Yeah.
He talks about getting an MRI as feeling like a judgment or this desperate search for answers that maybe aren't there.
Yeah.
But his journey, ultimately, it illustrates this incredible, infinite human capacity for resilience, for resolve against unbelievable challenges to dignity, to justice, even when faced with unspeakable suffering and repeated disappointments.
It's that survivor's guilt you mentioned, but also something more.
Yes. There's the guilt, the sense of being surrounded by this circumference of calamity, as he calls it. But there's also this unwavering resolve to find purpose, to use his experience, to tell his story, and to find a place where he can not just survive, but actually thrive.
Valentine Achak Deng's story, it's such a powerful reminder, isn't it? That while we often look for neat endings, real life is just this continuous process, rebuilding, questioning, striving.
Constantly.
It's a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure, to hope, and maybe somehow to redefine home and purpose, often doing both at the same time.
Absolutely. And his journey really challenges us, doesn't it? To consider not just what happened to him, but how he processed it all, why he persisted, and maybe what it means for our own understanding of resilience and even global responsibility.
Yeah.
It leaves you with a really provocative thought, I think. In a world where so many people are displaced, what do we truly owe to those who carry the weight of these extraordinary, often traumatic pasts? And maybe more importantly, what can we learn from their unwavering determination to find meaning, to rebuild, even after absolutely everything seems lost?
So the next time you hear a news report, maybe about refugees or some faraway conflict, perhaps take a moment. Consider the individual stories, like Valentine's, the incredibly complex journeys, and that enduring search for dignity, for identity that lies just beneath the headlines. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.